Lawmakers in Madison managed to come together to fund American Family Field renovations just before the legislative session ended for the year. CBS 58's Emily Fan and WISP Politics editor J.R. Ross discussed the final plans for state Republicans and Governor Evers as things wind down in Madison.
Well, that's a wrap for the fall legislative session as lawmakers held their final session days this past week, and they had some big ticket items that they wanted to get done. First, let's start with the Brewers bill. When there was some uncertainty heading into Tuesday on whether there was going to be enough votes in the state Senate, they got the deal done. But there was a lot of last-minute changes again to gain Senate Democrat support. It would lower the state's contribution by incrementally raising a ticket tax on non-Brewers events. So that was something they want. Also, Milwaukee got their representation on the stadium board. That's something that Milwaukee leaders have been fighting for a long time. So once those things were in, it crossed the finish line in both chambers.
It was fascinating that, one, you had a true bipartisan bill that passed both houses in bipartisan fashions. In the Senate, you had to get Democrats on board. You got 11 Republicans. That wasn't enough to pass it on their own, even though the majority. The ticket surcharge helped. Milwaukee stuff helped. It also helped that Republicans who opposed the deal, like philosophically, didn't try to undermine it procedurally. So there are all kinds of things that happen on the Senate floor where you can try to push a bill aside or undercut its momentum. Republicans who opposed the idea still stuck with leadership to get that bill advancing. The reason was, people told me, is they wanted it done. Nobody wanted to be the guy or the gal who made the Brewers leave Wisconsin. And the fear was, if you nix this, what happens next? So they basically stuck together as a caucus to advance it and then voted no if they weren't happy with it, but knowing they had the numbers to pass that bill overall.
And we got confirmation that Governor Evers is going to sign that bill. And also a big ticket item that many lawmakers wanted to get over with was a deal that would overhaul the alcohol industry. There's kind of three tiers to the bill. One would allow things like wineries to stay open past 9 p.m. Another provision of the bill would let breweries kind of mass produce their products to other establishments, you know, canned cocktails or seltzers. And then the real controversial part about the bill would deal with wedding barns, because if you don't have a liquor license right now, you would only be allowed to hold 6 events per year, or you're going to have to get that license. So there was some wedding barn establishments and owners that were at the Capitol trying to lobby last minute, and those are the ones that feel really impacted and targeted by this.
And this is a fascinating bill, again, procedurally, because you had a wing of the Republican caucus, about a half dozen members who were really holding this bill up. A committee chair had not yet scheduled a vote on this bill, even though they had a hearing 2 months ago. And Devin Lemmy, some majority leaders, said, okay, look, he's a co-sponsor of the bill. He found a way around that blockade by going to an amendment process, took another bill, attached it to it. And it's fascinating because what he did was he broke kind of a informal rule in the Senate of using only majority party votes to pass things, because he said, I'm not going to let this wing of the party hold up big bills anymore. So on the one hand, he found a way to get it done. On the other, he may have also left some sour feelings with his fellow Republicans about things going forward. There's another big bill, for example, about transmission lines called right of first refusal. That's still on the to-do list in the spring. Will that bill be hampered now because of hurt feelings over how Lemahue managed the alcohol bill in his chamber?
Right. It was the Brewers and the wedding barn overhaul of alcohol that, in a sense, was a really tough vote for a lot of lawmakers. But kind of like what you said, JR, people just wanted to get these done, crossed off their to-do list, and head into the holiday season, because they'll be back in January. Also this week, we learned that Governor Evers is going to start easing some lockdowns at 2 of Wisconsin's oldest prisons, that is Waupun and Green Bay. Both facilities have been on lockdown for several months, and what that means is that inmates have been confined to their cells for a majority of the day. So Evers was feeling the pressure. There was a lot of advocates calling on him. I mean, we even have people calling them to close these prisons as well, because there's a lot of poor conditions. Like I said, there's some of the oldest. But how he plans to do this and is the big question, because I talked to some Republicans. He wants to move 220 inmates from Waupun and transfer them to other facilities. Well, there's already an overcrowding problem at other prisons. So that's just something to kind of watch for forward of how this even gets implemented.
That is, by the way, a quarter almost of the Waupun population. And the challenges are that prison basically dates back to the 1850s, Green Bay the 1890s. They're both inefficient. They're not built to modern standards. A challenge also is Waupun, for example, is not in a major population center. It is hard enough to find workers for any business as it is right now. But with Waupun, the vacancy rate for guards and sergeants is more than 50%, right? More than 50% are vacant. They're pulling people from other prisons to help staff that facility. Options include closing it, closing Green Bay, building a new facility that would basically combine the two. That's a tough sell for Evers, right? Because he ran on a platform in 18 that included trying to lower the state's prison population. How do you accomplish that but also build a new prison? Now, the plan he announced includes studying options for Waupun, including decommissioning it, which means closing it. Will the governor really go down that path? That's a huge question for that. And where do you find the guards to staff these facilities? Now, they talk about how these pay raises are helping. They also have a bigger class of cadets coming in that will help, but these other prisons have to be staffed up to enable that process to work to move people from Waupun.
It's definitely not a problem that we could solve overnight, that's for sure. All right, that will do it for this week. Thanks so much for joining us.